Folks, I have spent all but 3 of my 65-year life within this thing called the Metroplex. And I love it, and I love it because of a lot of what you heard earlier today. And that is local elected officials making local decisions that affect the quality of your lives. You see that in the North Richland Hills Center. Here are just a few of the other decisions that your local folks are making to do things that they're not required to do, but to do things that they feel like will improve your quality of life. In addition to those things, your Tarrant County folks also make certain decisions. And those decisions, example, Criminal District Attorney Sharon Wilson has created an intimate partner violence unit in an effort to do everything she can to eliminate spousal abuse. She's also created a unit that takes and focuses on crimes against the elderly. Our Sheriff, Bill Wayburn, continues a courtesy patrol that helps stranded drivers on our highways. Our tax assessor collector collects for 72 different entities in Tarrant County, and I'm convinced saves our taxpayers millions of dollars. Our justices of peace work with the schools to try to lower truancy and to keep those things from getting out of control. All of those things are local decisions that are made. We're not required to do them, but they make the decision, and they have the flexibility to be able to do them at this time. In addition, the county takes care of health care and works through our county hospital, JPS, which is the only level 1 trauma facility in this area. In addition to that, it's got a great training program, and many of the doctors, not only around Fort Worth, but even out here in Northeast Tarrant County, were trained at JPS. We recently, as a Commissioner's Court, said we need to figure out where we're going for the next 15, 20, 30 years. We commissioned a Blue Ribbon Committee. That committee is going to be reporting back to us at the end of this month. But in addition, we have clinics around this community. Watauga has one. There are clinics, school-based clinics, as well as independent clinics, and they help provide the safety net hospital and medical care for many of our residents. Transportation mobility is a huge effort. Someone said the other day, well, what's the focus? Where do we want to be in 15 or 20 years? And what I said to them is, I don't know. Our job is to make sure we put together an infrastructure that allows the next generation of citizens, millennials in Watauga, whatever, to decide what they want to do, what they want their priorities to be. So hopefully through our transportation and our mobility, we will allow them to maintain that same quality of life that we've enjoyed in raising our kids and our grandkids. Here are just a few of the projects that we have done over the last 10 years. $10 billion. You're very familiar with one of them. And it's called this thing called the North Tarrant Express. The state put up about $600 million. The private sector put up about $1.7 billion. And as a result of that, we have over 200 lane miles. We have 4 managed lanes in the middle. But every inch of concrete that was free is still free. We've added 60 additional lane miles. And for that, you have the ability to decide whether you want to drive in the free lanes or move over and pay a fee to drive in the managed lanes. That would not be able to be done today. And I think, the legislature has given us some new tools, but at the same time, they removed some of these tools. And if we're going to provide that infrastructure, if we're going to keep people moving after they move here, then we've got to continue to grow our infrastructure, and that can be done in only 2 ways. We either leverage our investment with the private sector, or we significantly increase gas tax or other taxes in that form. I would rather there be the opportunity as a user fee for me to decide as opposed to it being dictated to me. taxes recently. For about the last 10 years, we have been blamed, local elected officials have been blamed for out-of-control property taxes. But let's be clear about where we stand in Texas in the first place. You know, most states have a three-legged stool when it comes to local and state tax revenue. State income tax, sales tax, or property tax. Texas ranks 29th. We're not in the top 10. We're not even in the top 20. We are 29th when it comes to state and local tax revenue per capita. Oh, by the way, we don't have a state income tax, and I pray that we never will. But when we don't have a state income tax, that does mean that sales tax is going to be a little bit higher, and we're 10th in that. And property tax is going to be a little bit higher, and we're 14th in that. Now, I don't have to explain to you that when you look at your tax statement, that the 800-pound gorilla in the room is school property tax. And so as you look at that, that's one of the things that we need to continually talk about. And it's also the thing where it's not only the feds pay about 10%, and the remainder is split between local school districts and the state. And over the last 8 to 10 years, the state has reduced its percentage of funding for schools. Now, you see this, the red line is the state, the blue or purple or whatever that color line is the local school districts. And I just want to make this comment. In the last session of the legislature, the House attempted to put an additional $1.9 billion of state revenue into public education. At the same time, the Senate tried to decrease that by $2.5 billion. Here's basically what has happened to the range. You know, I'm showing you numbers. What I have found since I really kind of got into this is every association, every representative, every elected official can show you different numbers. So let's not focus so much on the numbers, but let's focus on what it means to you. In the last session of the legislature passed a budget, and I don't know if you can read this last line, but what it basically says is the way our balanced budget is based upon, it makes the assumption that there will be a 14% increase in property values over the next 2 years. Unfunded mandates. Here's another place where we get blamed. You know, it affects your local property tax. It increases your local property tax. It's burdened on the homeowners. And it's where basically the state will pass a law, but forget to send the money with it to us when we have to implement it. Yesterday we held 126 prisoners, state prisoners. If they weren't with us, they would be in a state prison. The state would be paying the cost of caring, feeding, and housing those folks. For whatever reason, whether they violated a parole, whether they're paper ready and just haven't been picked up yet, they do not reimburse us for that. That's an unfunded liability that increases the property tax burden on our local homeowners. Oh, by the way, again in the last session of the legislature, the House of Representatives, by over a 2/3 vote, passed a bill that would prohibit unfunded mandates in the future. Great. It got over to the Senate. Lieutenant Governor Patrick and the Senate didn't even give it a hearing. So, you know, again, the state's pointing the finger at local and saying we're the problem. So just so you know that I'm not kind of the liberal spending, and our commissioner's court in our county is not the liberal spending folks. These are the 5, what I call large urban counties. They have hospital districts and then they have county. We're number 3 as far as size. If you look at that graphic, what you see is our combined tax rate is the lowest of all of those. So we've got the lowest tax rate. Oh, in fact, over the last 9 years, our tax levy, our taxes collected, have gone up on average about 2.8% per year. Now, they refer to effective tax rate, and that seems to be the magic number. 5 out of the last 10 years, our adopted tax rate was below the effective tax rate. So what does this mean, bottom line? We make local decisions that affect your quality of life. We're not required to do those. And that does increase your property tax burden on the local homeowners. And we'll take responsibility for those decisions, and you can talk with us, and you can tell us if you like it or not. But we don't like being blamed for decisions that we don't make. So when the state decreases its percentage commitment to funding public education, that increases the tax burden on the local homeowners. When the state legislature passes a budget based upon a 14% increase in property values over a 2-year period, while at the same time penalizing a school district should they choose to lower their tax rate, that increases the property tax burden on the local homeowners. And when they pass an unfunded mandate, that increases the property tax burden on you as local homeowners. We want to be able to continue to make the decisions and be held responsible for them, but we don't want to be blamed for those decisions that we do not have control over. And what we really would like to do is be brought back to the table. For the last 10 years, they pointed at us, they blamed us, and said we're the problem for property taxes. We are their partners. They pass a law, we implement that law, both at the federal level and at the state level. Lieutenant Governor says he wants to have conversations. We would welcome conversations. We would welcome being invited to the table to talk with our state leaders. We don't necessarily want to be blamed and talked at by our leaders. Okay, I want to end this thing on a much better note. We talk about these transportation projects. Those are 40-year projects. You just don't usually start a project and see it come to the end. I tell folks, they were working on 360 when I was born. I guarantee you they'll be working on 360 when I die. Well, recently, I was talking with someone, and this is kind of a philosophy I take about government's not the answer. I was talking with someone from the UNT Health Science Center. They had worked with Fort Worth ISD to do a pilot project on asthma 411. And what that amounted to was they put a nebulizer in an elementary school and a middle school with a nurse and let them basically treat the students that were having problems breathing. In the year before that pilot, 19 911 calls where they had to be transported, those students had to be transported to the hospital. In the 2 years after that, there was one 911 call, and that was in school where the nurse, it was after 4, the nurse had left for the day, and they had to call the ambulance. Everybody, so what we did, we found out that Fort Worth liked it, the Arlington liked it. I started saying, okay, maybe this is going to go countywide, and, Glen Whitley, as a CPA, doesn't have a whole lot of medical credentials. And so we involved Cooks, we involved JPS, we involved the UNT Health Science Center. And at the beginning of the school, this past school year, we have over 250,000 of the 400,000 plus kids in Tarrant County in schools where there was a nebulizer. And the nurses were a little concerned about what kind of level of activity this was going to mean for them. And what they found, I'll give you an example. I believe in Arlington, with all the schools that Arlington has, that so far they have had 350 treatments given by nurses throughout all the schools. But what the nurses have now come back and said, they were a little hesitant at the beginning. What they've come back and said was this: now for the first time I feel like I'm doing what I was trained to do. And I'm not sitting there watching a student struggle to breathe waiting for their parent to get there or waiting for the ambulance to get there. In fact, they said in most instances, a student takes the treatment and goes back to the classroom. So hopefully that will help them stay successful. If they go home, what they've said is they're usually out for 3 days. Cook's paid for it, but I will tell you, just about everywhere I go, when I ask, someone says, well, what's the cost? And it's $150 per school. Now, folks, that's what, as a bean counter, I originally said, no, that's not right. Show me the details, give me the paperwork. It was, it is, and people will say, well, sign me up for a school. And so United Way like this, they were helping too. So they put a line on their donor sheet. You turn it over, back in the right-hand side at the bottom, there's things called, I believe it's Kids Health. And so you can give to that, and it will go toward this 911 project. Now, Cooks said they'll continue to support it. They'll continue to take care of it. They do the training of the nurses. If your school, private school, public school, if they got a nurse there, we can get you a nebulizer, we can train your nurse, and we can go down that road to helping kids not have to worry about whether they can breathe or not. Folks, you live in, I think, the greatest place in this state and in this country. I've had a chance to travel around and visit other counties, and nobody believes the collaboration that we experience here, working with the cities, working with the other the school districts, and for the most part, working with the state and the federal government. We collaborate together. And I think we just need to try to move away from this blame game that we've been going down over the last 10 years, and really in the future look toward sitting down at the table, talking with one another, and basically solving the problems that this state has if we're going to continue the growth that we've experienced in the past, and if we're going to continue to let the local elected officials make decisions as to what their citizens want versus what somebody in Austin thinks or somebody in West Texas thinks that we ought to have. It has really been an honor to be here today. 3 minutes. You got 3 minutes. He told you 1:15. So I'll give you, if there's one question out there, I will attempt to, if you don't, Tom Law are in here, so it won't be a 3-minute question. If you've got a question, I'll try to answer it. Yes, sir.
Where do the funds go from the Express?
The Express, that's a private sector. I will tell you that when they started that out, the major investor in that program, again, they put up $1.7 billion to build everything. The major investor in that was the Dallas Police and Firearm Retirement Fund. And quite honestly, I think